What is up, my friends? Benjamin Beaver here, and I am so excited that you would spend some time with us here, 1:30 in the afternoon. Let me shut off the music so you can actually hear me. Oh, music's still going. Woo! Yeah! Really funny thing about music, makes things either awesome or not awesome all at the same time. There we go. Hi, I'm Ben, and it is so good to see you here on Love Akron Live. And as you can see, I'm working on a bit of a project behind me that's going to look really good coming up. But right now, it doesn't. So, hey, it's 2020, right? That's what people say. Just to kind of introduce you to what we're doing, this is Connection versus Collision with Love Akron. We got a great conversation with Dr. Dan Hawk, Bishop Johnson, and Jocelyn Grant and Miss Lori Porter. And it's, guys, I love these conversations. In fact, I just became a pastor actually over in Kent. And one of the things they said is, I got to stay in these conversations. I can't stop. Once you see this, you can't unsee this, man. I don't ever want to go back. So real quick, if you don't mind, actually, you got that little chat button down there in Zoom as well as on Facebook and on YouTube. If you can just say, hi, and I'm watching from, and just put that in there. So I'm actually watching from Kent right now, which is pretty exciting. Still love Akron. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Still love Akron, of course. But I am coming in from Kent. You make me laugh, Ben. That's what I hear from somebody. You know, my wife used to say that. She's it's funny once all the jokes are gone. She doesn't find it funny. You maybe make me laugh. I'll have to scoot earlier because of this. Yep, totally cool. Watching from Akron, Bruce, Griffin, Missy Garter. Good to see you, Judy. Always good to see you. Hey, you're in Stowe. I feel like I could throw a rock to you. I think that's how the saying goes, right? So you found that chat. Awesome. That's where you can ask some questions if you'd like. I'd love to bring on my co-host in just a moment, but in just jumping into here, we want to give a big thank you out to Caps Trust. They have actually sponsored Love Akron to make these conversations possible. And you saw a slide of them earlier. They are just awesome. So along with them is Peg's Foundation, and they have gotten behind this noun to verb movement that we are a part of. And we love our sponsors and partners, and we love getting to have these conversations. But that's enough of my face. Let's bring on Miss Lori Porter, my friend, over there in the Akron proper, of course. How are you today, Miss Lori, and what are you excited about?
I am great. I'm excited about life, to be honest. I'm excited just to be alive and to be well. That's a blessing in this hour, right?
Yes.
Camp is not with us today, so I'm his much more attractive filler-inner. He always says.
Let's be honest, everybody watching. Yeah.
Yeah, he's always telling us how hot he is, right? Which is really not so much how he looks, but he says it's Stacy, his number one fan, right? We're all his fans, but she got us all beat. She tells him how hot he is, but we know that means humble, open, and transparent. And so
we'll let him keep doing his.
We agree with her, but in addition to, so it's just great to be here, Ben. I'm super excited about how, even before COVID-19, how these conversations had been dabbled in a little bit, but how we have really pivoted and made an eternal commitment to continuing this dialogue and learning how to build, develop trust so that we can move things along a little faster. Bishop is with us today, and that's something that we've coined from him, and that is that we all tend to move at the pace or the speed of trust. And so these conversations are helping us to get to know one another better, helping us to understand one another better, and then to develop relationships so that we can trust one another and get things moving a little faster. So I'm super excited just about being here today.
Well, let's not keep everybody waiting,
All
man.
right.
I just want to give a quick introduction to, of course, the Bishop of Akron, House of the Lord, Bishop Joey Johnson over there. Woo! Man, theme music.
What's
Bishop.
up? What's up? Hey, how's that baby?
Oh, bro, the baby's doing good. The last baby's a little worried about, like, oh, this ain't going back. But she's my princess. Introducing Jocelyn Grant. You guys know her, of course. How are you doing today, Jocelyn? Love the shade, or not shades, glasses. Man, that was baby brain. How are you today?
I'm doing fine and glad to be here.
Good, good. And then a newcomer, a doctor, as it were. I actually got something I need you to look at after this Zoom meeting, but I don't think you're that kind of doctor. So
I'll pray for you.
Would you mind introducing yourself? You're new to the conversation, and I think Coach Kemp asked you to come here, and he's like, "Hey, go have a conversation with all those people, and I won't be there." So, who are you, and where are you?
Well, thank you. I'm grateful to be part of this important conversation. My name's Dan Hawk, and I'm a professor of Old Testament and Hebrew at Ashland Theological Seminary. I live in Ashland, Ohio, where the Amish come for fun. So I'm really excited about being in an urban space, even if it's virtual. It takes me out of my own comfort zone, stretches me a little, and just glad to be here. I am under the conviction that the pursuit of justice is a fundamental biblical concern. People asked the prophet Micah, what does the Lord require of us? And the first thing Micah said was, do justice and love mercy, and then walk humbly with your God, in that order. So it's just a pleasure to be here and see how we can pursue that vision of God's justice in the church today, in our place and in our time.
Well, awesome. So let's go ahead and thank you for being with us, everyone. And just to start off our time, Miss Lori, would you like to go ahead and just lead through this conversation of
Absolutely.
lament? And we started this last month. Why did we need another month for this? Didn't we finish it all in that 1 hour?
No, absolutely not. And actually, what I'd like to do, Ben, is I'd like to ask Bishop to, if he could, just kind of recap us and give us just a little bit of backdrop for this conversation as we had it, last week, and continue on for those that are perhaps joining us for the first time that weren't here last month. And then we'll jump right into our first question, which is, how do we as individuals truly lament with each other? Bishop?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Dr. Hawk is a great friend of mine, so I'm glad he's on today. He has a wealth of Bible knowledge as well as the integrity behind that Bible knowledge. Probably a couple, last time we were together, I started to really get all messed up in lament. I've read about 3 or 4 books, and you know what happens when I start reading, and got down into it. And as I began to look at it, I began to see here is a tool that we are not taking advantage of. It is a biblical tool, but also it is a tool of the African American church. And even though we've lost that tool, we're no longer using it. I'm convinced that where we are in the pandemic, where we are with the losses of life, where we are with all of this lockdown and all, there's a lot of pain here, and we don't know how to process that pain. Certainly, we need to grieve. But we're not even to grief yet. But if we're going to grieve, we need to lament that grief, to verbally talk about it, to walk our way through it. Pain is human, but lament is Christian. So when you read the Bible, lament is a Christian response of prayer, a Christian response of verbalizing pain in order to turn from the pain to the person of God. And so I got all tied up in it. Anything I get tied up in, Coach gets tied up in, because he has the same issues I have. So we started to talk about it and say, well, what do we do about that? And that's how kind of we got this all started. So it's my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's amazing because with all that our country is experiencing, when you talk about lament and you deal with the fact that it is an expression of a great, deep grief that a person might have. Bishop, how do we as individuals truly begin to lament with each other? And then I'm going to ask Dr. Hawk if you would follow Bishop, and then Jocelyn, if you'll jump right in there and just talk about from your experience, your platform, how do we truly lament?
What's up, Jocelyn? The thing is, we're going to have to relearn, redo, reset, because we don't have much experience at lament. We are a triumphalistic country that wants to jump from praise to from problems to praise, from pain to praise, without going through lament. So I created a little metaphor to try to help people get a visualization. If pain is Egypt and praise is the promised land, you got to go through the wilderness in order to get there. You got to go through lament. You can't jump that whole thing and just jump over into praise. But that's what we do. In one of the books that I was reading by Mark Verga, he asked the lady they had been to the Civil Rights Museum, and he said, give us a lament. Would somebody sing a lament? He said, she started singing a praise song. He said, whoa, wait. Okay, because that's all we know. We don't know how to face the pain, to really look at the pain, feel the pain, verbalize the pain. And so another thing that I've been talking about is the great reformer Martin Luther, who said in this one of his disputations, I think it's number 21, he said, when you begin to talk about life, theology of the cross calls a thing what it is. A theology of triumphalism calls evil good and good evil. So we don't know how to call things what they are. And so one of my members has been saying to me, oh, I like that. Call it what it is. What is it? And then still have hope on top of after we have called it what it is. So we're going to have to move in, face some stuff, and then we might be able to verbalize what we are beginning to feel.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Hawk.
Well, always hard to follow the bishop. I mean, that guy runs so fast. Every time I talk to him, he's read probably a dozen more books. And I speak to him at least 2 or 3 times a week. Just kidding. So lament. How do we lament with each other? I think it begins with empathy. That willingness on our part to open our hearts, to take into ourselves, to share the suffering of others. I mean, I hear pastors talking about the importance of being broken by the things that break Jesus's heart. But I think lament is a willingness to be broken by the things that are breaking our beloved fellow human beings. And that means not seeing them or seeing their suffering as a problem that needs to be fixed, but addressing suffering as our priority, rather than something that we'll get to when we have the time or the opportunity. So when I think about lamenting together, I think about really prioritizing in our hearts, in our commitments, in our convictions, the pain that is being voiced by our beloved sisters and brothers, and making room in our hearts and our minds, and being willing to be moved by those expressions of pain. And I mean moved in every sense of the word.
Thank you. Jocelyn.
I had a lot of thoughts kind of running through my mind listening to both Bishop and Dr. Hawk. I'll start it this way. I grew up in a storefront church. It's still standing here in Akron, Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church. And my mother was the musician there. In fact, that's where my parents met, actually. But one of the things that was very inviting about the church, and it was kind of popular in my little small microcosm, was the music. And I say all this to say there was an ability that you felt in Elizabeth at the time that there was an active lament all the time. But in the other 1,000 Zoom meetings that I've had this morning, I was talking about the idea of coupling both that lament and the encouragement that God has been with us throughout the entire time of our experience, both experiencing the pain and drawing strength from the knowledge that He has been present. I thank Dr. Hawk for his perspective, saying that we should be moved in every way, not just in having bad feelings or feelings of guilt or patting each other on the back and saying how terrible things are, but moved in such a way that, coupled with this pain and coupled with this experience, I now have some marching orders because I've leaned that closely to God. As much as we are leaning toward each other to lament together, we also have to, hand in hand, we have to lean closer to God also, because during that time that we're spending together to lament, I believe that also God begins to whisper what is next for us. And sometimes that looks like encouragement. It may come from the mouths of someone else, but is indeed inspired by the Spirit of God. So I think that it's important for us to be able to do both things, both feel what we're feeling, communicate it to one another, but also quiet our fears enough to be able to hear the Spirit of God saying what is next and to encourage us to move forward. I learned all that in my little storefront Baptist church, Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church on North Street. So I think that we have to be able to do all of those things at one time.
Wow. So you all may not, like I'm all over the place. I'm like, I have a few questions I want to ask, but there's so many things to say in the middle of that, because modern day lament, can any of you think of an example that would give us an even deeper understanding of what lament, modern day right now, where have we seen that? Have we seen it?
Let me jump in. First of all, let me say from Jocelyn hit something on the head so hard, she drove that nail right through the board. The African-American church has latent tools of lament in the songs that are the history of our people that we have lost and begun to put down. And so that's one area we need to pick them back up. Number two, as we work our way through that kind of lament, we must come and begin to sing again those kinds of songs. So we don't have that. How did our parents make it? Because they did active lament through song. Well, whereas we are now moving away from that. In terms of lament, I think one powerful example was Doc Rivers during the NBA playoffs, where he comes on and he's almost crying and he's saying, we keep loving this country, but this country doesn't love us back. And you can feel the pain, the pathos. You can feel it, and it's like something has happened and it grabs you. And it seemed to grab the entire NBA at that point. And so I'm not sure if you're aware of the sequence of events, but after that, they started to talk about not playing. And I mean, just a lot of things begin to spiral at that point, because it is the feeling of dealing with those kind of things. Another quick thing, Jocelyn she's hot today. She's been talking about, being able to do both. Sometimes I make people laugh because just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. But I like to talk about at funerals, it takes two hands to handle a whopper. And everybody goes, oh my God, where is he going with this? When you have, it used to take two hands. It doesn't take two hands anymore. But anyway, it used to take two hands. It takes two hands to worship God in a grieving situation. With one hand, you wipe away tears. With the other hand, you praise God. Mm-hmm. It is possible to do both and in the grief recovery perspective, we talk about the conflicting feelings that come at the change of any normal pattern or behavior. You can be rejoicing and lamenting at the same time.
Whew. Okay, man, that was good. Dr. Hawks, tell me this. Let me say this also. If you have questions, you're with us on the Zoom, you can just type those questions in the chat. And we're going to come through this next question, and then we're going to bring Ben back to ask some of those questions. If you're watching us through Facebook Live, you can put questions there and we'll try to get to your questions. But Dr. Hawk, we can't help but think about Old Testament. You know, I know as a believer for now over 30 years, and reading through the Psalms, and reading what some of the prophets wrote and said, and you see that lament. What scriptures? Why were people lamenting? How does that apply to today?
Oh my, that's a wonderful question. And the Bible, as you've noted, is just filled with laments, and people lament all kinds of things. So there are prayers, there are laments in the book of Psalms that are individual expressions of grief and loss and questioning and protest, and they run pretty much the full range of human suffering. People crying out to God because of illness, because they've lost loved ones, because they're being abused by others, because they're people are spreading falsehoods about them, because they're being humiliated, because they're being rejected, excluded. It's just all over the place. And one of the fundamental aspects of those laments is this, in a sense, speaking back to God and saying, in a sense, God, why is this happening? I don't deserve this, and you're letting me down. The most common beginning for a lament in the Psalms is some variation of, where are you, God? Why don't you see? Why don't you act and help make things right for me? You're not being for me who you promised or you said you were. And so if we look at the Psalms in particular as invitations, as a book that teaches us how to speak to God. Most of the Bible is God speaking to us, but Psalms is a book that says, here are some ways that God invites you to speak to him. Those laments, that deep questioning, that deep expression of grief, not only for the situation that we're in, but why God isn't working in some ways. And most of those laments are also occasions in which those who speak them and sing them and pray them are also saying, but God, I feel like, even though I feel like you're letting me down, I'm hanging on to you because I think you're going to come through for me. I believe in you. I know you too well to think that you would just abandon me to my pain. So those are the kinds of prayers that we read in the Psalms. There are corporate laments where God's people come together because of national tragedy or national threat or some kind of loss or confusion, and they lament together. And then there are the prophetic laments, the laments of the prophets, and they work in a different way generally. I mean, there are some occasions where prophets are lamenting for their own situation, but a deep thread, a deep strain in the message of the prophets is a lament. And a lament, as the prophets speak them, is a challenge to the powers that be at the time. The powers that want to say, we're having some trouble right now, but we'll be okay. We're doing as well as we can do. It's all going to be all right. We got this. So there's this tendency in the Old Testament for kings and rulers to say, we got this. And we're going to manage this. We're going to do okay. And in a sense, to numb everyone to the real suffering that's going on. And in those situations, and I'm thinking specifically about Jeremiah, in those situations, a lament is a way of saying in very direct terms, no, things are not okay. Things are terribly broken. People are being hurt and abused. And so lament becomes a way of exposing all of the mechanisms that rulers have to numb the rest of us from the pain of others, to help us to look away from the things that are really broken, that just cause pain and suffering in our society, and lift them up simply by the expression of grief, challenging this idea that that the culture really wants to have, that it's okay, we're fine, we can make it through. So lament in the words of the prophets and the practice of the prophets is that powerful prophetic confrontation that demands that the society see and witness and hear and respond to human suffering.
Wow. I kind of want to hang out with you outside of Zoom. That, even what you just mentioned, just that the numbing, that being kind of our default. I'm like, that's America. You know, make us happy, make us feel good inside, and that's how I'm seeing more and more how that's how the systemic racism continues to be what it is, because it don't feel good. And this is me personally as the white male here in the room as well. It's like, it doesn't feel good to really look at myself and look at my who I've been in this culture. You know what, Pauletta, I'd love to have you, Pauletta, if you're able to, has a great question, but as I'm setting her up to do that, please, guys, just put in questions. This is a dialogue. This is conversation. There's my sister. Man, it's fun because Miss Paulette and I have never actually met in person before, so I believe she exists for sure. But I am excited. So, you mind posing this question to our panelists today?
What I was thinking about is that this whole, as I was typing a question, Dr. Hawk was answering it, and I thought, okay, I'm good. This whole issue of a God-given burden that God gave the prophets. And I was just thinking about the communities that we are in, being prophetic people and looking at and hearing what God is saying. I guess my question is a couple things and thoughts, is that can we truly lament without a real God-given burden to see things the way that God sees them? And my second thought was, in our society right now, we think about, I love sports, but there's an amusement side of entertainment and TV and sports that keeps things going and makes us feel good in the midst of our suffering. And I'm thinking about the election, all these things that are going on in the earth with COVID, people suffering, and people, it's almost like in the Bible when they're saying there's peace, but there is no peace. Any thoughts? I'm just kind of processing what I was feeling.
If I may answer, I always defer first to my elders, but also to the greater offices that are in this conversation.
Go ahead, Jocelyn. Quit messing around. Go ahead.
Come on,
I'm going to just slide a little bit in there while Dr. Hawk was talking about Jeremiah. My brain was already at Jeremiah. He said Jeremiah. I said, because I began to think about what we now call depression, and how he allowed what he was experiencing to affect him in such a way that it made him say a few things that I may not say to God. I may not have the courage to, but he allowed things to affect him. When I think about having the burden, I read your question, the burden of lament. I think I'll say it in two parts. First, I'll start with when you were talking about the amusement part of how I'll speak for Americans. We have this, but I think it's a human nature type of thing. When someone is going through something difficult and they share it with us, or we're all going through something difficult, many of us, we experience it different ways. And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to get rid of the pain as quickly as we possibly can. So that's why you have things like there was still a basketball season, and they're trying to figure out, football and all of that. And they're trying, because people don't want to really feel what we are actually feeling. It is a detriment to our progress to not acknowledge where we are right now on many different fronts. But when we're talking about racial conciliation, I don't like to say reconciliation because we were never together. We have to get together now. We're talking about that, and we're talking about those of us who feel that pathos you shared, that burden. It is because I have the ability, empathy, yes, but I have just a different way of saying it. I have the ability to put myself in your shoes. I can divorce myself from my bias, my preference, my personal experience, and feel your pain. We don't always want to do that. We want to assuage those feelings as much as we possibly can. Stop people from crying. You don't have to cry, give them platitudes. We want to do all of those things because it makes us uncomfortable. We don't want to be affected by our neighbors' feelings. But in this space, we have to be. If we're going to make progress, we have to allow those feelings to come, even if we feel that they're overwhelming. Because the truth of the matter is, if we allow ourselves to feel those things, one, we must trust God that He is going to walk with us through the experience. But we also, as we talked before, there's a coupling. We can feel this pain and still witness to the saving grace of our God. And we have to do both of those things. But we have to allow ourselves to feel that as a leader, as leadership, I don't think any of us wish to have that. I think we just have it. We are chosen. I don't think people who are wise would choose something like this. But this is who we are, and we have that heart. So I think, but even if you're a leader or you're not, think that you don't consider yourself to be, because the Bible says we're a priesthood, so you can do whatever you want to with that. But I am saying, whatever it is that wherever you find your station in life to be, having that heart, we don't, as believers, we have to live with both. We have to allow ourselves to feel both. And not to talk any further, but I think that's the thing. We have to have the burden. We have to live with the burden, but we also have to work and worship through the burden.
Let me jump in on top of my dear sister who's doing such a wonderful job. I said, Prophet Pauletta, you are a prophet. You're asking a prophetic question. The pain and suffering is human. Mm-hmm. Lament is Christian. Only Christians can lament. Only Christians can turn from pain to the person of God. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hawk touched on it, and he touched on it so beautifully. There are 3 questions that I sum up. Now, I'm in a 9-message series, so my language is really easy to come up with because I'm preaching on it. But there are 3 questions that I think are asked in lament. Number 1 is why. Number 2 is how did this happen? Number 3 is how long is this going to go on? So you just look at those questions, they keep coming up. And they come up from Christians. We're turning from pain to the person of God. Now, anybody else, you're a non-Christian, you're turning from pain to football, from pain to basketball, from pain to the mall, from pain, wherever you're turning. Christians are turning to complain to God. Okay, and now there's a problem with that, because in the Old Testament, the children of Israel complained about God, but I'm not sure they complained to God. So it is a Christian response.
Bishop, and man, and the entire panel, because going back to that and talking about it being the Christian way of handling this pain that we feel, then what we see in our world around us, what we have seen down through the generations. I posted something today that said, I'm no longer going to apologize for working at a slower pace, for not always being available, for how long it takes me to process my feelings, for not knowing the answer right away, for accepting myself who I am, and then prioritizing the people in my life. So I want to say that to say, because when we look at this pain, sometimes we feel like we have to apologize. It was something Jocelyn said earlier, for the pain that we feel. And Bishop, I believe I heard you one time refer to giving people a Kleenex at a funeral. And really what that implies. It almost implies dry your tears and it's okay. But I think that when we talk about lament, we have to talk about the fact that it is okay to not be okay, to say you're not okay, to sit in that moment. How do we give people permission? How do we help people pivot and get to that place and that point? Because sometimes it's not an external rush. Sometimes it's an internal rush because of how we've been raised and trained, right? Get a spanking as a child. What would your parents say? You better dry them tears up. So I got pain. But
why don't we let Dr. Hawk feel that?
Yes.
Oh my. Well, I think one of the primary things that lament says theologically is that our suffering matters to God because we matter to God. Laments tell us that we are a valuable member of the relationship. God looks to us. We have something to say. Now, our relationship with God is a dialogue. It's not a monologue. And I think a lot of Christians in our culture have this idea that my relationship is a monologue. God tells me what to do and how to live, and my role is just to submit and to be obedient as I can and to exercise my faith and not to complain. But laments, which are just so prominent in the Bible, tell us that who we are and what we bring to the relationship with God matters, and it matters at a basic level, because of who God is and of God's great love for us. God wants to hear us. I mean, I think of Jeremiah saying, "Why is my wound? Oh God, God, why is my wound, my pain unceasing? Why is my wound incurable, and it just won't be healed? God, you're like a deceptive brook. You're like drying up on me." That's pretty direct. That's the kind of language that you use with somebody that you feel close to, but who you have some issues with, and you want to work through them. So I think at the core of it, we need laments, and laments can be a wonderful tool of this. I mean, we are invited by Scripture, by the Psalms, by the prophets, to express our disappointments, our
Mhm.
questions, our pain, our grief, our loss
Mhm.
directly to
Mhm.
God. God cares, and I think Bishop hit it right on the head right at the beginning of this conversation. We have got to lament, and we
Mhm.
just because we're human, and we need to have that sense of being that we matter, and that we matter to God. We've got it. We got. I think a lot of us have some work to do in undoing some theology that says, just put up and shut up in your relationship with God.
Miss Porter, our
Yeah.
Dr. Hawk's hitting that. Our theology is in our songs. Jocelyn's already helped us with that.
Mm.
Our theology is in our song. We got a song. Now, I know you know this. I have people laughing at church. It's entitled, I Won't Complain. Okay. Now, you done already complained in the first part of the song. I've had some good days. I've had some hills to, no, don't start complaining now. I've had some, okay, well, you're complaining now. Then you get to the end of the song and say, I won't complain. Now, I think what the songwriter is attempting to do is to say, like the children of Israel, I won't whine. But complaining is a biblical perspective. And yes, you asked a wonderful question. We have to give people permission because they don't know that they can. They think I shouldn't. I don't want to complain. I don't want to be like the children of Israel. Well, there's a whole lot of people in the Bible besides the children of Israel. How about Job? Job did a whole lot of complaining. Okay. And we misread Job because we read Job like, all my appointed time, I'll wait till my change come, as if that was a positive affirmation. It wasn't a positive affirmation. It was a negative statement saying, God, I'm afraid of you. If I wasn't afraid of you, I would tell you to your face how wrong I think you are. But I'm scared to do that. But I'm going to do it off here on the side over here. And that's how we do in church. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to act like I'm having difficulty, but I really am. Like God doesn't know that. So I think Dr. Hawk is hitting that all on the head, and Jocelyn too. Lament is a tool that we must give people the permission to experience. Just go ahead.
Can I
Yeah.
sorry, can I step in here? So we've talked about lamenting to God. I think it's important for us to talk about lamenting to one another. And I'll say it as directly as it has come across my mind. When is the last time you have allowed a Black man to cry when he felt like crying, or be angry when he was angry and not feel threatened? When is the last time you've allowed a Black woman to express herself in the difficulties that she may be experiencing and not label her as something other than her name? So if you're not going to do that, the conversation is going to stop here. We have to give, just as Bishop and Dr. Hawk have said, we have to give each other permission to express our difficulties in freedom and not try to censor someone because it messes with our sensibilities or our preferences. There's no reason why we should talk about lament if we're not going to give anybody real permission to do it, or give them guidelines through which to do that. Scripture already does that. So if we're going to really allow people to lament, we really have to create that space for them and accept and respect whatever it is that they have to say, even if we disagree. Because I cannot tell you what your experience is or how you experience a certain situation. I can't tell you how you should feel. And oftentimes we do that. When I say we, I mean people. But if I'm going to be direct, I mean the majority tells the minority how they should experience what they're experiencing. And that is counterproductive.
So let me ask this question because I've got two more to get through. But so when we look at the world around us, we understand very clearly that the church laments. When we look at our world at large, tell us what lament is not. What do we see every day that is not lament? It is the opposite of what we've just talked about here today. and just a short example in all of our panelists,
Well, I think there are two things that two extremes that come about. First of all, we don't lament because we won't face what's going on. Number one, I think the visible church is dead. So let me just go ahead and say that and move on. I think America, as we have known it, is dead. Okay, so there's two things to lament. As we begin to look at that, then we've got to deal with the two issues. On one end, American people are so goal-oriented, control-oriented, individualistic, that they are angry that they can't control the pain. So I'm just angry about it. I don't know what this to do. Then on the other end, we have more Christian kind of responses of, I refuse to look at it because I think God's going to work it out, or it's going to turn out good one day, or it's triumphalistic America, it's going to be okay no matter. Then we're in denial. So we're either, to me, we're on one end, we're angry, we're in denial. Neither of those is lament. Lament is feeling and expressing the pain. I'm working on Lamentations right now. How lonely sits the city that was once full of people. How lonely sits the church that was once full of people. How lonely sits the country that once stood for justice. How lonely, those things are gone, they're dead. And how do we lament about them?
Either one of you, Dr. Hawk, Jocelyn?
I was just thinking, and with that those last few sentences, Bishop, I'm thinking of a psalmic lament, and that's Psalm 137, where there has been this incredible loss of everything that the people of God held dear. And they find themselves in a strange place, a strange land, in exile. That it's gone. All of their hopes, all of the things that they knew, the world that they knew is gone. And they're in a situation where they know they no longer have control. They have lost hope, and their lament is how can we sing the Lord's song in this foreign
Don't make me shout up in here.
So to get back to so what is lament not, in a sense? I understand the question, and here's an example that I see. Government leaders saying, we've got this COVID thing. It's going to be, it's going to be over in a couple of months. We've got everything in hand, well in place. I mean, even at the level of leadership, lamenting is the opposite of lamenting is smoothing it all over and saying and completely denying the pain and suffering that's there and presenting a false picture of the reality in which we all live, with the idea that if you get enough people to accept that, you can ignore the pain as a society.
When you mentioned Psalm 137, I thought of Psalm 138:6, and I need to make sure that I had the right verse. But it was Psalm 138, verse 6, where the colloquialism of that verse is actually, he sits high and he looks low. Scripture says that he is exalted and he looks kindly on the lowly. That excites me. I used to get angry about it because I didn't need God to be high and not be low with me. I just got excited about the scripture when you were talking about it. But to answer the question, just to think about how to move to the next step. So I know that we had another question, and I'll read it so that I won't say it incorrectly.
I can give it to you. I'll feed it to you.
I have it already.
Okay.
I was ready.
Okay.
Is lament the first steps toward racial healing, biblical reconciliation for people of faith? As I said earlier, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that we're not reconciling, we're creating something that has never been. Take everything that everyone has said, just to remember that this is something new, that we have these tools, as Bishop said, that God has given that are dormant, that we have to enliven again, to think about the examples that God has left us in the Bible, to begin to activate those things, to ask those questions, to make space for one another, to couple it. Let us both lament, also worship. Let us both cry and also praise. We don't get to swing from one thing to another, as Bishop said. We have to be willing to go through the desert for a while, and we have to be willing to feel uncomfortable, and allow other people's experience to make us uncomfortable enough to be moved. I hope that I'm answering.
You're answering it. You're answering it.
So that's all I want to
Mark
say.
Vergat wrote a book called "Weep with Me," which is deals with the tool of lament as racial reconciliation. I'm listening to Jocelyn, because she's telling me don't be talking about no racial reconciliation. We ain't been reconciled, but to talk about how we can become reconciled to one another. And I think it's a powerful tool. What has happened is finally in this space, people have begun, our white brothers and sisters have begun to ask us, they want to grieve with us. They want to hear where we are. But often they want to fix that rather than lament. They want to jump from the, okay, well, here's what we can do. And here, no, well, wait a minute. Don't fix me. I need you to feel what I'm feeling. And Jocelyn, you said something, my dear, that I want to just come on to say, yes, there is a sense of God in which he is sovereign, but there is a much greater sense for me of him being tempted as we are in all points, yet without sin, coming down and sharing our pain and walking with us in the midst of that pain.
Right.
Dr. Hawk?
That's such a powerful and important question. And the first thing I think about, I mean, Bishop talked earlier about resources in the African American church for lament and recovering those. And I, as he was talking, I was thinking to myself, I don't think the white church, generally speaking, I don't think we have those resources at all. We don't really know how to lament. I struggle to remember any sermon that I've ever heard in any church, in any white church, that talked about lament. So we're used to numbing. And from my perspective, we're numb. So I think lamenting can be a step when there's genuine lamenting and sharing. When we, for example, from the white church, can pray sincerely with Jeremiah, oh, that my eyes were springs of tears, so that I could weep for the slain of my people. We've just been in control for so long, and we've tried to manage things for so long, and we've had the power and position to say this is the reality that we all live under, and we're now experiencing the eruption of centuries long pain and suffering and trauma. So as I've been listening to this conversation, I've been thinking about Job's, not Job, but the friends who wanted to sit with him as he lamented.
So-called friends.
And well, they were friends. They sat with him for 7 days, and they didn't say anything. They sat with him. But then finally, I mean, over this long time, finally, when he did begin to utter and express his grief, they didn't like what they heard. It didn't fit what they had defined his situation to be.
Exactly.
They had thought they had all the answers, and they're trying to fix it. They're trying to explain. So they go from, I think, a genuine impulse to be with him in his suffering, to all of a sudden saying, we cannot agree with that. And you see in the process of the book of Job, they're getting more and more frustrated because they can't keep Job's suffering in the box that they constructed to
In a
explain.
lot of ways, I feel like.
And I just, and so what we have to do is we have to lament genuinely. And until we do, I think until we are willing not only to sit and to listen, but to allow the suffering of others to shape the way we feel. Until that point, we're not going to move forward, I don't think. And that's our work to do.
Yeah. And Dr. Hawk, you literally gave a polished way of saying we cannot censor one another. We cannot, you reiterated what was shared earlier. We cannot censor one another. We cannot, I loved what you said, the container, the box that Job's friends wanted to place his experience and his pain into. That's just not going to work. It's just not. We're going to have to allow that space.
But that's the issue from the white church. I mean, it's an issue. It's not an existential. It's not an existential human experience, and so we're more comfortable just dealing with this on the level of ideas and principles and what we should do, instead of getting down. Instead of getting down in there with our suffering brothers and sisters and saying, we just want to be with you. We want to stand with you. We want to hear you. And we need you to heal us.
Dr. Hawk is my new friend.
I know. I'm like, Dr. Hawk, do you write books? Because I'm sitting here during this, I was like, man, I want to read this guy's book or take him out to coffee. I don't know which one I'd like.
You got to read. He got more than one book, so you're in trouble.
And a couple of them don't have pictures in them.
Oh no!
Ben's gonna close this out, but what I'd like to do is give each of our panelists 40 seconds to just lament COVID, government, continual racism in the face of our country. 40 seconds.
That's easy for me. How long, oh Lord, do we have to put up with this untoward situation?
Oh Lord, we are profoundly broken. We need you. That's mine.
I'm exhausted.
Mm.
And I say that as not just me, but many people that I know. We're exhausted. We need rest. My prayer is that we would find that in the green pastures that we read about, that God would provide still waters for us that restore us.
Amen.
My lament is that I have to follow that up.
I know.
Guys, this, just to echo everything that has been said, but thank you, Dr. Hawk, Bishop, Jocelyn. To echo what you said, Dr. Hawk, it is so true. Being in, I heard somebody say there is no black and white church, technically, but But yeah, Jocelyn, you gave me the exact look of what it's like. Yeah, but let's look around. Do people look like me? In my church, yes. And yeah. So now my lament is needing to wrap this up together, guys. I hope this started a conversation for you. I just put in our chat our next step link, and the reason for that is because we have to go down this road in relationship. And that's why we do this, is to inspire and empower relationships to happen, connections rather than collisions. So thank you to all our panelists today. Make sure to sign up on right there in the chat. I'm putting it on Facebook as well. Another thing to let you know about is this is more of a, hey, we don't have the official communication out, but block your date off, is December 17th. We are going to do an Akron, Greater Akron wide lament. We're going to practice this. And we're probably, we're going to do the best we can, but like was alluded to, this isn't a normal thing, especially for people with my pigmentation. It's uncomfortable. But as Coach says all the time, got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So thank you for spending time with us. We always end with something, Dr. Hawk, that we do that's kind of fun together, is you just say, love. What's that? My bishop, what is that?
I love Akron.
Oh, yes, you do. All I saw was this, and I was like,
He beat us. He beat us to the punch.
I know. He's like, wrap this thing up. This is Bishop here. So all you got to do is say, love Akron here at the end. Miss Lori, would you like to set everybody up?
Yeah. So as we continue in our journey of learning how to lament, how to bring racial healing and healing to our nation, our communities, and our families, if you don't do anything else today, just make sure that you love
Akron. We love you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of
next
today. And please take that next step, because we